Right, everyone. Welcome to Skyrocket Education. We are so excited to have folks here today. We're going to have a wonderful conversation about two new programs that we are launching here at Skyrocket, called our Skyrocket Global Connections. I am Antonio Vance. I am the Chief Schools Officer at Skyrocket Education, and I'm joined today with two guests that you'll hear from a little bit later in our conversation, both from the United Kingdom and England, Professor John Bomber and Julian Grant, who are joining us. Thank you both for joining us from across the pond, and we'll hear from you all shortly. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our discussion today about our two new programs, Global Connections. So we have devised two global pathways for school leaders and for your students. The first is our Praxis for the Future program. It is laser focused for leaders and for teachers to think about how they can improve and connect with other leaders and teachers across the globe, really laser focusing in on praxis improvement, teaching improvement, and how to improve teaching and learning throughout their building, all through the lens of a professional learning community. We also have an amazing opportunity for your students through our global externship program. This is an immersive experience for your students to help them to engage and collaborate with peers across the world in either in-person or virtual settings across the globe. And we are excited to launch these two programs. We're going to dive into them very shortly. Before we do that, we want to think about who is the Global Connections program for? Who are the folks that will really benefit from joining us? The first is we have to all acknowledge that we are living in a totally different world than we had been before. Our world is connected in ways that we couldn't have imagined 10 years ago. We no longer live in these siloed worlds where it's only our community. Our communities are now connected in ways through social media and through technology, and we are moving at the speed of digital. And so we have to make sure that our schools, our teachers, our leaders are all prepared for that motion forward. Also, we really want to be able to engage with schools that are ready to move to the next level for their students. How are we preparing our students to think about and to dream about a global world? Again, our students are seeing events happening across the world in real time. How are we going to make sure that we are preparing them to be global leaders in the world as they dream and think forward? And finally, schools that are ready to think about brand new possibilities. Schools that are ready to think and dip their toe and throw their hat into the ring to move their schools to a global community, to engage in ways that they hadn't thought before, and the possibilities are going to be limitless. We currently have a very large network. So as you already know, Skyrocket Education is connected to schools, teachers, and leaders throughout the country. And now we're adding to this network. And our global network includes countries with schools throughout the entire world, where the United Kingdom, Sweden, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, as well as lots of other folks. And John and Julie are going to talk a little bit about that later, but we are really excited to bring that connection and that network to you and to your schools and to the programs that you all are currently doing. So let's take a look at that first program, the idea of Praxis for the Future, which is a professional development initiative that is laser focused on teachers and leaders to connect them through professional learning communities and to help to address solving pedagogical issues, addressing shared educational challenges, and really thinking about ways to enhance teaching and learning. And most importantly, how do we use reflective practices to look back and reflect on our practices for improvement? But being able to do that with colleagues from all over the world. So we have a set of focus areas for the 25-26 school year. There will be opportunities to join in, to participate in the road and journey to become an international lab school, where lab schools really focus on teacher professional development, building educational knowledge within your school, and action research. In addition, there are opportunities for you, your leaders, and your teachers to grow their cultural awareness, participate in project-based learning with your staff and your students, and to think about ways to engage students in varied ways. And most importantly, thinking about ways to engage and integrate technology, not just in teaching, but in the ways that you help to develop your teachers and prepare them for a digital future ahead of them. And we used to talk about a digital future. That future is already here with the inclusion of AI and how that is impacting and influencing the way that we teach and learn. I wanted to take a second to spotlight two very interesting programs that you can think about if you're interested in dipping your toe into to our Global Connections program, and then allowing us the opportunity to help build and show you the much larger network that you could be a part of. The first is the idea of our peer observations and appreciative instructional rounds. And the purpose of these instructional rounds is, and especially the key word is the appreciative instructional rounds, is that it gives teachers the opportunity to examine instruction and teaching and learning and highlight the areas and things that are happening that are spot on, that are helping to move the school forward. There are practices that should be solidified and made concrete, and helping to surface those and make sure that they're risen to the top and that they are continued and really built into the fabric of the school community. And then that provides you the space and opportunity to identify gaps in areas that where improvement can occur. And it allows for this reflective process for teachers to reflect on their practice, for leaders to reflect on their leadership, and in the end, really move the school towards improvement. And that entire process is rooted in research and really can make the impact that a lot of schools are looking to make. In addition, there are opportunities for joint action research projects. And of course, this goes along with the journey towards being a lab school, but actually allowing educators to collaborate and work together to study a shared problem and think about how they can use that to improve their school and work together. And there's an opportunity with Sutherland University to get that research published and out globally to the entire world. So these are just two programs to spotlight. If you head to our website under our Global Connections, you'll see a list of 10 different places and areas that you and your school leadership team can plug in to the global network that's already up and running and ready to go. So I'm going to take a moment, I'm going to pause. I want to hear from distinguished Professor John Bomber, who I've known for years and have worked together for 10 years now on these global projects. Really happy to have you here. John, you are the expert in this. Why should folks be interested in this? Why should they care about connecting their schools to a global network?
Thank you, Antonio, and welcome everybody. So I've been at this game for some time, and I'm totally convinced that the school I led and the school I've worked with benefit greatly from connecting to a global network. I'm really clear about what makes great schools. Great schools have a really high moral purpose and a high expectation of both teachers and the young people. They are focused on great teaching and learning, and have instructional leaders who know how to interpret their leadership into that sort of teaching environment. However, most of our time we're surrounded by noise of administration and in the case of the UK, very high levels, high stakes accountability that make things really difficult and provide an alternative focus to the direction of schools. What you get when you work in an international setting, that noise goes because it's irrelevant. You in the US do not want to know about the iniquities of our inspection system and the impact it actually has. So the conversations we have are about teaching and learning, our professional community that actually shares the practice that we have. And we all have very different things that we bring. So just, there's a long list of countries there that I've been working in and Julian's been working in and Antonio's been working in, but they all bring very different things. And you say to yourself when you're listening to them and looking at their practice, well, why are we doing that? Could we not do that? You know, there's this danger word culture where people say, oh, it's not in our culture to do that. That's just baloney, really. That's an excuse. The reality is that you can learn and adapt and contextualize all of those things to your context. So both Julie and I have worked extensively, in my case now for 25 years, with schools in Sweden, and a particular group of schools called Kunskapsskolan have 34 schools that Antonio and I have been linked with in Sweden. And they have a very strong personalized model that frightened many of our heads in the UK anyway, because, you know, the students are designing 50% of their teaching time to meet their goals. They're very driven by the goals and the coaching support they have. And sort of you ask yourself, you know, how do they get such great outcomes from that particular process? So that's a totally different perspective that you can then bring into your particular area. If you look at UK schools, and we work, Julie and I, with something like 80 odd schools across the UK, I think we've seen over the last 10 years real growth in teaching and learning styles, particularly in subjects in early years, and now increasingly around special needs and alternative provision. So that again gives a different type of perspective. And if we go really wild and you go to Dubai, I was visiting the School of Humanity there recently, and it's a totally online school. Now, interestingly, they map everything to the Common Core curriculum. But what the children are producing is truly amazing in that online world for those very high achieving young people. Now, what we're not saying is that all of those things are relevant to every individual school, but what you do is pick out and ask that question, well, could that work? And can I get some advice from those particular people about what they've done so I can build my model that works within my particular context? So all of those things, I think, work. I think the other big strand to the work that we've been doing is one of appreciative inquiry, which Antonio mentioned before. You know, there's so much of our systems which is about judging us and about telling us what is wrong. Whereas, you know, looking at Euroschool, there's lots of things that are going right. So we should be looking at the positives and then asking ourselves the question, why aren't these happening everywhere in my school? And other things that I could develop that would make that bit even better and stronger. So that appreciative inquiry and then identifying key areas for growth from what you have within to share, again, is a really positive. And then you enlarge that across and find those elements of best practice elsewhere around the way. So I can't speak loud enough about what I have learned and what we have learned. And I know when Julian talks later, he'll be able to bring it down to a school level and the implications for his particular school and his young people. Antonio mentioned lab schools earlier, and a lab school has 5 different tenants. Strangely, even though we've developed it here in the UK in our network, it comes from America. It comes from John Dewey and Chicago. And the advocate here in the UK has been Lawrence Stenhouse, says that great teachers reflect on their practice and learn from that practice. We don't do enough of that, but that underpins what we do. And And there are 5 tenets. One is we have to reflect on our learning. We have to do action research. We have to be part of bigger practices. We have to do innovative work. And I'm so old, I've forgotten what the 5th one is. But working in that particular way and researching together, you know, if you're a doctor, if you're in medicine, you're constantly refreshing and thinking about what you're doing and going for a 99% success. We don't do that in education. We sort of make it up every time we do it. And we have to learn from that practice and doing it together and taking the well-being aspect as well. You feel great about your job when you feel masterful, and also you feel that you're doing something bigger than yourself. So if in your small classroom you are doing something and can show the impact of that, it doesn't have to be big, and that can then be part of a bigger piece of research that the university take on, and then we can write something with your name on it that makes you feel a part of that particular profession. So yeah, connecting to that global network changes schools and improves learning in those schools.
Absolutely. You got both questions answered in that. Thank you so much, John. All of those points were spot on, and the benefits, I believe we all can agree are ultra clear. Great. Thank you for that. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit and take a look at the programmatic parts that are a little bit more focused on students. And so our global externship program is a student-focused program that brings students and classrooms together from across the world so that they can work and collaborate together on real-world interdisciplinary challenges. And for this year, the 25-26 school year, we've decided to focus in on 2 global project themes. One is around the climate and environment action, and that's really to think about solutions to address local environmental issues and really think about sharing strategies across communities. The other is global health and wellness, thinking about your local context and a global context around promoting healthy practices, raising awareness, both about mental and physical wellness. And those are the two foci for the 25-26 school year. Now, what does it look like for student involvement? And to John's point earlier, the approach really is a personalized, bespoke project manner that you will decide and think about what works for you, your school community, and your students. And we have one approach, but we're open to and the availability to tailor this to your school is optional. And so in general, students will meet, we'll set all of the connections up and work with the other partners at other schools. And we'll follow this very clear project-based learning cycle and approach where students will introduce, get to know each other, giggle about each other's accents, and then have the opportunity to jump into the research and to think about and collaborate and understand a topic, their local and global context. Think about how to design and co-create solutions and create presentations and artifacts, and then have a time to reflect on that and think about their findings. And we'll create the opportunities where that can be showcased either in person during conferences or virtually. And so I've highlighted 4 different programs. And if you go to our website, again, there are 10 options where schools can plug in to our global network. And that can range from something as light touch as global pen pal programs where we match your students with students in South Africa or in Dubai, and they can communicate and talk about specifically the problems that we're talking about, or just learning how to improve communication and build global friendships. And it can get us as deep as these, much deeper global debates and discussion circles where we're talking about larger engineering or science or political or whatever the actual discussion is about, where they're having deeper conversations, but employing skills like critical thinking and empathy to work together to create something that they can present at the end of the year. And really important, this idea around local problem, global solution. What are some problems that you can identify in your school community, in your local community, where your home is, your state, and throughout, and be able to translate that and think about what are some global solutions? What are other countries doing? Whenever I travel, I always see really simple solutions to some of the problems that bother us, as simple as when I was recently in the UK. If you know any bottle that has a top, the top stays attached to the bottle. There's a little tab. In the US, that bottle is off, it's thrown, it ends up in the ocean. But around the world, they've solved that. They keep the bottle there so that when you recycle, that top remains. And so thinking about how you can partner, your students can partner with students across the globe to think about solving a local solution is a win-win for everybody. And so we're going to have Julian. Welcome. I've known Julian also going on 10 years now. Julian's the head teacher, Shevington High School in the UK, in England. And Julian, I want you to talk a little bit about how did your global connections that you made help you as a head teacher? And for our US folks, that's the principal, the lead of the school, help you to rethink the way that you approach teaching and learning in your school. And you're on mute. And now you're off mute.
Okay, I'm off mute. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And yes, Antonio, right. Okay, yeah, so I think the first thing would be I visited Sweden with John. So John was running a study visit to Kunskapsskolan schools. And I was keen, and the reason I went on the visit was I was looking to try and develop in school student drive and determination. That was my original thought. And so we went out to visit Kunskapsskolan. And when we was there, and I think the thing for me is that what happened, and I always think of it, what it did was the study visit and actually looking at how the students, the teachers, the leaders were working over in Sweden, that really provoked me as a leader to question, well, what am I doing back in UK? Why am I doing it the way I'm doing? Because I've just seen a totally contrasting different system, and there was no real good reason why we didn't, apart from, there were certain things that we have to do in our system. So it made really me reflect on what I was going to do. And therefore, from that, developing then sort of like a keen interest, working with John and the network that John had built up, we started to embark on this sort of challenge of trying to take what inspired us. And so there were three main things. One was the personalized approach to learning that got in place. The other one was coaching one-to-one. That was an amazing thing to observe and watch as a leader, to see a member of staff talking to a young person and that young person articulating and setting goals for the week or the term and so on. And then also to see them working independently in what they called a workshop lesson, which I think John mentioned earlier. So their whole approach, very different to what we have back in the UK. And so it was that process of then thinking, actually, how do we do this? And you can only do that by networking, by discussing, by working with other colleagues. And so we really co-constructed within what we called the SAIL network materials that we were going to use in our school that were very personalised to us, but other schools in the UK that were involved in the project were doing the same thing. And it was about trial, experimenting, and really trying to develop some core aspects. And I think the thing for me is that you've got to stop and think and go, right, okay, we couldn't do one-to-one coaching, for example. It was amazing, but in our school, we were just under 1,000 students. There was no way I could feasibly and logistically do one-to-one. So we had to think about alternative ways to do the coaching for the students to set their goals on a weekly basis. So it means you've got to be innovative. You've got to then, like I say, talk to other people. I think I remember, Antonio, talking to you when you was at obviously Great Oaks, and you were talking about how you got your students to sort of like at the start of the academic year, I remember we changed what we were doing in school because you were talking about how you got them to identify their goals, long-term goals, which we'd not really picked up on, their aspirational goals for jobs or for university, etc. And so it's that collaboration helped us to develop our approach. So, and in the end, we managed to implement a coaching system across the school, and we continued doing that, and we still do. Every student sets goals and reflects on that. We also developed a much personalized approach to teaching and learning. So we introduced themes and missions where it gave opportunities for students to take responsibility. And again, that meant thinking about what will you do with your teaching and learning. And again, it was a big culture change. But again, that only worked through the collaboration and working with others. As we developed through, so we started 2017, we then worked closer and closer with Kunskap Scotland as well. And actually to a point where we had their leadership team come and visit us at our school, one of the schools that we were working with, and then we went and visited them so we could see in greater depth on how they applied some of their strategies. So then we could then interpret in our way and adjust what we were doing. So I don't know if that's answered the full question for you there, but it meant a radical review of what we did. And I thought, how can we change what we do so it will be better for the young people and the teachers?
And Antonio, I'd just like to add one thing to Julian's as well, really.
Yep.
So the world in which we live in and the young people face is very different from the one certainly I went to school and where you went to school. And if we are to prepare our young people for the future, we have to think about some quite radical changes to the way that we do things. That's really tough to do when you've got an accountability system and quite conservative parents and all the rest of it. So just to think of three things. So the use of AI and technology in schools, the increasing amount of neurodiversity and how you address those issues of equity, and also as schools, how we think about how we organize it within tight budgets. You as a school cannot change all those things at once. These are big things to do, and you have to be really careful about impacting on the rest. But if you've got 80 schools in different contexts working on all of those different things and you're sharing your progress in those things, you can then have a much more comfortable picture about how you go forward at pace to be able to address those sorts of issues. And if you can do that across countries and contexts, all the better.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Strengthen numbers. Thank you, Julian, so much for your, John alluded to it, but your bravery to sort of go against the grain and bring something new, and try something new is commendable. So thank you.
And Antonio, one of the things he isn't saying is that, because I've been on part of the journey with Julian, is that when Julian took over, this wasn't the school of choice. It was a good school, but it wasn't the school of choice. And now he has a long list of parents and children who want to be in the school as a result of taking those brave decisions.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you both for your insights and helping to bring to clarity the advantages of what's possible with these global connections. All right. So come join us. The benefits are enormous. The opportunities for your students to become culturally aware, empathetic, and to foster a different type of awareness that really will help them as they grow into the future, and it really helping your school to strengthen their own practices and build for the future. And then for your teachers and leaders, helping them to develop in ways that both John and Julian just spoke about, ways to bring in multiple thoughts and multiple ways of thinking will only help to benefit your school and make it sustainable for the future. So we appreciate everyone joining us. That was a very quick overview of the work. If you are interested in learning more, we are here at your disposal to talk about. If you're ready to take that leap, we are happy to discuss how we can create a personalized, tailored global program for you. that's either light touch, you can dip your toe in and start to experience it, or if you're ready to leap in and travel the world and learn about teaching and learning throughout the country, we're here. Email us at info@skyrocket.org. Always at Skyrocket. Thank you. We will Skyrocket. Thanks, everyone. And thank you to my guests. Thanks for coming out, and we'll see everyone soon.